Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So the last video today is going to be a specific subject that I don't think people holistically think about that often. But who was the most hated man in the Bible? So if you think about that, a lot of people come to mind. Job, for one, suffered quite a bit. And then you may think Judas Iscariot for the reasons that we know about Judas, or maybe one of the priests, maybe one of those guys, or Pilate, or who would you think the most hated man in the Bible is? So to get that answer, we're going to go to Isaiah 53, and this was written by the prophet Isaiah, and in this chapter 53, it pretty much tells you who that is. And this, for a lot of Jewish people that read the Bible and the New Testament specifically, this opens some eyes sometimes around who actually was here versus who wasn't. So let's dive into it. Isaiah 53. And this section of the chapter is called the suffering servant. So let's get right in. Verse 1 says, "Who hath believed our report? And whom is the arm of the Lord revealed?" Verse 2 says, "For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root of dry ground, and he hath no form nor comeliness. And when shall we see him? There is no beauty that we should desire him." Verse 3 says, "He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as sheep before the shearers is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the land and the living, and for transgression of my people was he stricken." This next section of the book is called A Grave Assigned. Verse 9 goes, "And he made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. And when thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see the travail of his soul, and shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death. And he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors." So Isaiah 53 always gets me, because Jesus came and he was perfect, and we killed him for it. Okay? So the world hated him. which was the deal that he knew in the beginning, and it's why he came. So in the beginning of man in Genesis, God had an agreement with us. We were actually never supposed to die. We were never supposed to go to hell. We were supposed to live eternal lives. If you read the Old Testament and you read how long these people lived, they lived quite some time, some upwards of 900 years. Adam, who had the breath of life breathed into him by God, lived almost 1,000 years. And so his offspring lived a very long time as well. There was a biologist in the 1940s who did physicals for the military. And he was a scientist and a doctor. And he said when he looked at a 25-year-old man, the organs and how they aged, the suggestion was the average lifespan should be 150 to 200 years. And this quote, when I read it probably 30 years ago when I was in the gym business and was a personal trainer and doing all that. It kind of took me aback. And he compared the biology of a 25-year-old man versus other things that lived a long time, like reptiles, tortoises, turtles, crocodiles, etc. And I remember when I was in college, there was an alligator that was killed. I'm from South Carolina. There was an alligator that was killed in South Carolina, and when they cleaned it, it had musket balls that predated the Civil War in it. And so that was 120 years prior to the date that I'm talking about, 130 years prior. So that blew me away. I was like, wow, that's a long time ago. That's a long time ago. So the lifespan of man was shortened because we broke a covenant with God, and then we were able to die, and we had to work, and the pain and suffering of life was upon us for what we earned. And so when I read Isaiah 53, the way we got back to God is because Christ came and paid the price. He lived the hate, and he felt it all, okay? And he, on the cross, accepted God's will, and God, too, abandoned him. So in the final hours of his life, he was completely and utterly alone. So you got to think, before that, the Holy Spirit was with him his entire life, right? His Father was with him his entire life. And in that moment, because of us, he was completely alone. So if you ever wonder why there's hate or why you're hated, and if you ever think about who the most hated man in the Bible is, read Isaiah chapter 53, and you'll learn that to be good is to be hated. The only perfect man that ever lived was killed for sins that were not his, was beaten, broken, and like the verse says there, he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. That's verse 5 from Isaiah 53. This always moves me. Hopefully it moves you. If you like content like this, please like this video and please subscribe. I'm Ben. Be good.